we've got Rick Bolar of North Texas Owners Group, who I don't believe is here because he's in Europe and has had some real problems with connectivity. But we do have our other co-chair, Kevin Douglas, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time introducing Kevin. Hannah, will you get the yeah, there you go. This is how we're going to go through this next session. We're running a few minutes late, but it's not too bad. One thing we would like to do is that there are maybe 30 or 40 people on this call who probably have never been to one of these policy groups, and certainly the roadmap group. And so here's the sort of the rules. We would like to go, everybody that has not been here and is here because he is an owner of an EV. We'd like to say where you're from, which EV you drive, and how many you've owned. And I'd like for you to do that within 10 or 15 seconds. Protocols, when we start talking about things, you can only speak about one particular question at a time, unless we have a real void of interest in that issue. And then on the possible questions, you see them there. What issues are facing EVs in the next 2 years, the next 10 years? How will Vita X or Vita G or Vita H, as we saw today, affect the value proposition? Charging issues, just like we were talking about just a minute ago. Will inductive wireless charging become widespread, or what's your position, or do you think it'd be valuable? And also whether or not public chargers should be regulated. That's something close to what Michael was talking about, is who's going to make sure they're working, who's going to make sure that we don't have a great boondoggle, a $400 million boondoggle out there. So, and then the last one is what kind of transition do we expect? And this is not meant to be professional. This is meant to get the feelings of our owners and our drivers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. And Kevin, I'll let you run herd on everybody and let you start getting the introductions from folks. I think we just let it fly and see who comes up.
All right, Michael, thank you. First of all, I do want to say, Michael Conklin, I'm glad I'm not following on information presentation, because absolutely doctoral level stuff. But it's a really exciting time. I thank you to TxETRA to have me host this portion of this transportation roadmap. This is not about me giving everybody information for 15 minutes. This is a great opportunity for us at TxETRA to hear from you, the EV owners and drivers. And so it's exciting. I'm presently in London on a trip, and walking around the streets. We've got electric vehicles driving all over London. It's just such a phenomenal time. I've been involved in this for 20 years, and what a time to be experiencing this. So without further ado, we'd like to go ahead and start off, as Michael said, with who you are, where you're from, which EV you drive, how many EVs have you owned. So I'm Kevin Douglas. I'm from Houston, Texas. I drive a Chevrolet Bolt and a EV and a Tesla Model 3, and I've owned 6 EVs. So we have somebody that's managing our callers to keep it in order. So I'll pass on the microphone to those of you that want to share your story with us. Thank you.
You want to go ahead, Rick?
Hey, this is Rick Thomas. I'm in Frisco, Texas. I drive a 2022 Tesla Model S that I got in December. It's my second EV. First one was a Tesla Model X that I got in September 2017.
Mark?
Hey there, it's Mark Shellard. I own a 2020 Bolt, and my wife has a 2019 Bolt. And I just moved back up to Central Texas from South Padre Island, where it was pretty easy to discover that the charging infrastructure south of I-10 is not beautiful. So it's my goal in life to make it much more doable to make it all the way down
Okay.
there without stopping to
All
charge.
right. Too many words. Sterling.
Hi, my name is Sterling, with my wife Cheryl, and we're here in Houston, and we've owned 3 EVs. We currently only own a Tesla Model 3. We owned a 2011 and 2013 Volts, Chevy Volts. And one of the issues is that we're renters, and we rent a single residential home. And the ability to use solar to charge from our home is not available to a renter. And also the EV during Winter Storm Uri was our generator, our backup. So we lived in our car when we did not have electricity. Thank you.
Jimmy, Jimmy, do you want to go next? Jimmy Host.
Sorry. Jimmy Hosh, Dallas, Texas. I own a early model Nissan Leaf, still do. I own one Chevrolet Volt, what's about 3 years old.
Awesome. And Eric Smalling.
Hi, Eric Smalling. I'm in North Fort Worth near Roanoke, and I have a 21 Mustang Mach-E that I've had for about a year. I have had 3 prior plug-in hybrids, but this is my first full EV. I had 2 Volts with a V like Victor and a Ford Fusion Energy before.
Thank you. And Lindsay Perkins.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Perkins. I'm in far north Dallas, and I have only owned one EV, and that is a Tesla Model 3 from 2018.
Cool. Thanks, Lindsay. John Weber.
I'm John Weber, Corpus Christi, Texas. I drive a Focus Electric right now. It's the 7th EV. First one I built myself in 2006.
Thanks, John. Sandy Phillips.
Hi, Sandy Phillips. I'm in Round Rock with my hubby Scott, and we've owned a 2013 Leaf, a 2014 S, and we just upgraded the Leaf to a 22 Leaf.
Thanks, Sandy. Gerald Mann.
Hi, Gerald Mann from Dallas. I own a 2021 Polestar 2, and it's my first EV.
Thanks, Gerald. Seth Alberts.
Live in the Houston area, currently own 2 2017 Chevy Bolts. They are respectively my first and third EVs. The first one doesn't have DC fast charging. The second one does. I've road tripped in that one a couple of times. Before I bought the second Bolt, I had a 2011 Nissan Leaf that my wife commuted in. And with the slip up that Smitty made before, I am also a PV owner. I have solar panels on the roof.
Thanks. And Dale next.
Hi, I'm Dale Beulah. We had 2 Nissan Leafs, and then got our Toyota plug-in hybrid. And then when our Model 3 came in, we got that. So we've had 4 plug-in vehicles.
Awesome. And Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Choate from Austin. I own a Model Y and a Zero electric motorcycle, and I think the most interesting car we've owned was a Henny Kilowatt from the 1960s.
Buzz.
Hi, Buzz Smith. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas. We've had 6 Chevy Volt plug-in hybrids. We're down to 2 now. We're shopping for our next electric vehicle.
Cool. Thanks, Buzz. And Greg.
Thought I'd add something different. I have 50 shared use Fiat EVs. So I spend my time in between those 50 of them, but I have one in particular I like to drive. And then I have a DeLorean electric.
Awesome. That's and then David Lowy. You're muted, David.
We've been driving electric. I'm David Lowy. We've been driving electric since 2013 with the Leaf, which was flooded in, and then a 2017 Leaf that was flooded in Harvey. And now we've driven 2 Bolts with a B, a 17, and we're currently driving a 2020.
Cool. Thank you. I think that's everybody that had their hand raised.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I had Hannah pull down the document. You can put it back up, Hannah, and I'll hand it back over to you, Kevin.
Okay, so we want to hear from you all. And the first question we have is, what issues are facing EVs in the next 2 years and in the next 10 years? We've heard already about folks that are living in apartments or rental units where charging might be difficult for them. I'll let you all start. And again, Amanda will manage the interested list.
Amanda, let's also add Teresa Porter, who says she doesn't have the option to raise her hand. So Teresa, if you want to unmic, we'll watch and call on you. And also Alan Grief is posting in the chat.
My technology is not working very well today. Somebody nod if you can hear me.
We can.
I'm in the Waco area. I just bought my first EV almost 3 years ago. It was 2016 Leaf, and just bought my second EV, a 2012 iMev, 3 months ago. And I love them both, even though they're Chathamos. I still love them.
Thanks, Teresa. David, you had your hand raised.
Yes, we lived in a high-rise downtown after Hurricane Harvey. Thought we were safe on the 12th floor. And then, of course, plumbing broke on the 8th floor and descended through the elevators everywhere. But we had no capacity to charge in this high-rise, even though the owner, I understood, owned a Tesla. And that would have been very helpful. There were no electrical outlets even to do a wall charge at this place. Now we're renting in a private home, and fortunately the amperage is sufficient to do a 110 charge. And even though we had warnings about the Bolt and its batteries, we've been going to 100% the whole time. They haven't set up an appointment for us to have the batteries replaced. So apparently we're in a group that was not at high risk in that recall. But we worried that if we moved to another location, an older home, that we'd have to redo electricity there, because you never know, if the system can handle charging.
Thanks, David. Lindsay?
Yeah, thanks for calling on me. So I am also in a townhome, and it's an older townhome community, about 35 years old, and there doesn't look like a good space to even add chargers for this community. So I think that older structures might have difficulty including those for their residents. As a Tesla owner, I've noticed that there are longer lines at superchargers, and it's not just waiting in line that could be an issue, but also how the lines are in the parking lot. I know that one location in Dallas actually had attendants out directing people where to wait in line to minimize risk to everyone. So I know that that's something. And then also, I've just seen some more misinformation going around. I know that that's always been out there, but on Nextdoor recently, I've just seen an uptick in that. So I think that those are all issues that we're facing imminently.
Thanks, Lindsay. Gerald?
Yeah, I think she just mentioned one thing I was going to touch on, which was education. In general, I deal a lot with people in California, and it's just amazing the difference level in the education among all entities, whether it's governmental or private parties, in the whole EV space. And so I think we've got quite a job ahead of us here in Texas to get even the most basic information out to 96-97% of the population. The other thing that came to mind, though, is just charging deserts. I'm sure you guys have discussed this before, but the economic model of placement of charging isn't necessarily getting charging to all the areas of town where some of the people can really benefit. Some of the disadvantaged communities, federal money is going to help with that, but it's going to take a real concerted effort to get this EV infrastructure rolled out equitably.
Thanks, Gerald. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what I hear from a lot of people. It's not an issue for me, but the apartment living, not having a place to plug in at night. And also what Gerald said about the lack of chargers. I know, for instance, my daughter is probably going to be going to Texas Tech in Lubbock. And without a Tesla, there's really not a convenient way to get an EV from Dallas-Fort Worth to Lubbock and back, at least not mine. And I have 270 plus miles of range. So that's, that needs to be fixed. From the maps I've seen, I think that is going to be resolved in the next couple of years. She goes in 3 years. So we got 3 years to fix that for me. And I had a third one and I can't think of it now, but those are the two major ones that I can think of. Oh, I know it. Reliability of DC fast charging. So as a non-Tesla owner, I've not taken a ton of road trips, but when I do, it's always in the back of my mind, is that EA charger going to work? Or am I going to be waiting for somebody because 3 of the 4 are dead? So having that more easily visible to the apps that are in our cars and just, that kind of thing needs to be solved better, in my opinion.
Thank you, Eric. And Jimmy?
I drive a Leaf with a 100-mile range. Charging at public charging stations is a hassle, simply because I can gas up at any gas station using a Visa credit card, and I simply can't do that at charging stations. I've got to be a member of that charging system. It's a big hassle. On my screen that shows charging stations, I can't tell which charging station is which brand. So you drive up to it and, oh shit, I don't have their particular card. That needs to be fixed. The second thing is I own solar panels and I'm retired, so I get the luxury of charging at home. It would be very, very convenient to be able to charge those electric cars, a Leaf and a Volt, when I am producing excess electricity, which my utility is very reluctant to pay me for. So I would like some capability to be able to tell that I am producing excess electricity that I'm giving away, and I would rather store it in my electric vehicle batteries. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. And Sterling?
Thank you. Yes, I guess my point would be that in any government, provides any help that single resident rental property, the landlord should have some assistance to just at the very minimum put a 220 volt line into the garage. Not all rentals will have that. And I've done this in 2 houses I've rented, and it's cost about $200 to do that, just to put a receptacle, but I have a charging system that I can use. But I think that should be the bare minimum that we can do. I don't know how on a multiple family rental unit, I'm not sure how that would work, but it should be available to these as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Sterling. Mark?
Hey there. Just wanted to mention what I put in the chat. I mean, a standardization for payment would be ideal. I mean, I was literally talking to somebody this morning who doesn't have an EV, and they were like, "Well, how do you do that?" And I realized I was about to start describing the 7 to 10 apps I have on my phone for charging at different locations. So either we need to get plug and charge being more of a prevalent thing, or condense that down to one app somehow. The other thing is dealer education. I mean, I've still got dealers that are calling me up asking me if I need an oil change.
Thanks, Mark. How about John Weber?
Yeah, I'm down here in Corpus Christi, and what we're really lacking down here in all of South Texas is interstate charging. If I could make it to San Antonio, I could drive to Arizona, but I can't make it to San Antonio. So South Texas is being not. There's nothing down here for getting people around unless you own a Tesla. So I think we need to not forget about us South Texans, and I'm not even that far south. It gets worse the further south you go.
Thank you, John. Buzz?
John got a lot of agreement for that in the chat, by the way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Buzz.
One of the things I see coming in the next, it's probably closer to the 10-year mark, is we're going to see a lot of oil workers displaced. I used to be in oil and gas back in the mid 80s and lost everything when Houston collapsed during the last major oil recession. So we're going to see, and we're such a divided country right now politically, we're going to see some violence, I think, at the public chargers. We're going to see, it'll start off as passive protests where people want to block the chargers as their way of saying, hey, you took my job, you EV drivers. But we're going to see things starting to happen, and we need to have laws in place ahead of time about blocking these chargers with gasoline powered vehicles. It needs to be like a handicap spot. It shouldn't have to be policed by the business owners who are putting these things in order to attract people to their business. They don't need the added responsibility of then policing that device. So we've got to see that that's coming, and then add to that the increased demand for electricity is going to drive up the cost of electricity. So again, you're going to have people that were at the edge having a tough time paying their electric bill and taking it out on EV owners. So we need to get out in front of this right now. One, making these safe places to charge. And by the way, I would not put credit card swipers on these things. A lot of them are located in the middle of nowhere along highways, and that's just a way to either get robbed or have somebody steal your identity through your credit card. But I think we got to start thinking about the social impacts that are absolutely coming and get ahead of them.
Thank you, Buzz. Laura?
Yeah, I've been involved with policy in California for years, up to before I even bought my first Tesla, when we ordered our first one in 2010. But one of the things, I think you guys are hitting on it, and like Buzz, I'm an ex-oil field person, and I lost my job in 1986 in the oil business when it crashed. But I think one of the things we've seen in California, where there's obviously quite a bit more adoption, is several things. People are policing. I mean, blocking chargers and things like that is a reality all over. There's a whole passive aggressive, and I'm a firm fan of Tesla's cameras for that reason. Quite a few people have been prosecuted based on that information. But also, one of the biggest issues, and I think you hit on it with the South Texas, I'm in the hill country in the New Braunfels area, is secondary roads. Texas it's a massive state, And California, one of the things we did in our roadmap with the state and the energy people was secondary roads and charging, informal charging systems, whether it's at rest stops or things like that. And I agree on no swiping your credit card because that'll never end well. But I think that's clearly going to be an issue we face here is you will always be limited in your transportation depending on the range of your vehicle. And my first Tesla was 60 kilowatt Model S, a 2012. And I mean, it's still on the road and doing a great job, but it only, can go 170 miles between, chargers. So we will have issues with that. So I think critical is some sort of a formalized program where we're not talking about I-35, or I-10, we're talking about the secondary roads, which are substantial. And that's, I think, something that as an organization needs to be pushed. Texas has a remarkable highway system. The roads are great here. After I left here in the 70s and coming back, I'm like, oh, thank God I'm on decent highways again. There's a few exceptions, but I do think it's really critical that we look at the secondary roads and not so much the interstate. The Teslas and somebody here mentioned the Buckies. There's a lot of capacity on interstates, but not so much on the secondary, the state highway system. So thanks.
Thank you, Laura. David, did you have something else?
As far as the rising cost of charging goes, we always charge at home, but recently our fairly reasonable provider of electricity went up double at our rental home. And so essentially we're paying twice as much to charge from the wall as we had been doing. But somewhere we stayed at a bed and breakfast offered charging and seemed to think that Tesla was in the process of opening up their chargers to anyone, even owners of other electric cars. Has anyone heard that that's true? I haven't heard that.
It's true, but it would fry most of the cars. They basically catch fire because the wiring can't help high throughput. But yes, they're doing it in Europe.
Right. Thank you all. I think that's everybody that had their hand raised. Do we want to move on to the next questions?
Yeah, let's do.
Okay, so wow. I want to let you all know that we thank you very much here at TxETRA for your input. That is exactly why we're having this session. This session is being recorded, and I know a lot of folks are taking a lot of notes, and it's going to fill up our meetings for the next several meetings. Our next question is about vehicle to grid, vehicle to load, V2X. And I think most everybody understands it, but it's the idea where you're not only charging your electric vehicle from the grid, but your electric vehicle is being used as a power source for the grid. And there, we will ask the question so that you can input on that. And that is, how will V2X or V2G affect the value proposition of owning an electric vehicle?
I just wanted to say thank you to Amanda for monitoring a great job on people talking.
Thanks, Dale. How about Bob?
Thank you. As I had indicated in a prior presentation to the group, and I'm happy to share the slides if anybody would like them, the value of flexibility really increases exponentially with the penetration of variable renewable energy sources like wind and solar, as well as storage like EVs. So as both of those get highly penetrated, the value really goes up very quickly. And that can be measured in savings in generation fuel costs, wear and tear costs, new construction costs, reduced transmission and distribution constraints, ability to sell more electricity, retiring dispatchable plants and replacing them with renewables. It kind of works in all of that. And if you just get down to the numbers, and I'll just finish on that, about 15 billion a year by 2030. And Rocky Mountain Institute already estimated in a paper that came out in the last week about $3 billion this year, or about $20 million a day, is the value of renewables. But as we get to higher penetration, you'll need more and more and more storage to actually be able to take up that variability. And by having the vehicles be flexible, that'll be a big part of making it all work and making it work cost effectively. And that will come back to the users, through all the smart meter work that we've done, and we can figure out who has actually shaped their load and should be getting a benefit accordingly.
Thanks, Bob. And Jimmy?
I applaud your comments. I am simply not, I have solar panels on my house, and I've thought about getting a battery, but it makes no sense to me, at least, to hang a battery on the wall and wait for the time when I might need it, when I could have it in a car and be driving up and down the road and drive home when I need that battery at home. So I'm waiting for vehicle to grid technology to become available and affordable before I add that battery to my solar. I have been dealing with Green Mountain Energy since I put solar panels on 10 years ago. They simply changed their reimbursement model for excess energy generated coming up on a year ago. And they decided they simply won't pay me for some of the energy that I generate to them. So the reimbursement model for vehicle to grid compensation has got to be worked out and stable over time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Sandy?
So we do have solar panels as well as power walls. And as you've probably seen, Tesla's trying to have a virtual mega pack, essentially, to help the grid out. They haven't tried it for Texas, but it is live in California. And one of the things they're doing in California is to pay the customers who actually share their battery capacity. And I think the same would have to happen with the cars or the trucks, whatever you're doing in V2G, right? Another thing that you would have to have as a safeguard where, our Tesla apps will constrain how much of the battery is drained out. You don't have that same versatility with the other manufacturers. I don't know how the Ford Lightning intends to, control their back and forth, but our Leaf does not have a very robust app. So you'd have to either put it in at the meter that something's got to be monitoring that you don't drain the car empty, obviously. And so that, and paying the people who are sharing to basically support the grid would have to get done.
Thank you, Sandy. And I think that's everyone. Ready for the next question.
Okay, the next question is, I'm going to add one little thing to that, and that is what kind of consumer protections, and I think we just answered that, which was folks are going to be concerned about having their battery emptied out. And so to add to that, I think that those are going to be part of the interconnection agreements that we're going to have. You have interconnections agreements when you have solar, for example, when you're delivering power, you're hooked up to the grid. We're going to have interconnection agreements with our electric vehicles, with the utility. Charging issues. The next one is, do you believe inductive wireless charging will become widespread? And I will start off with, because I'm in a plugless power, which does wireless charging. So I hope that it does become widespread.
Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead, Sandy.
As a very big sci-fi fan, I would really love to see it become widespread. I think there are a lot of technical challenges to making it widespread, and really hope it does. I know they're testing wireless road recharging somewhere, I think in Italy. But I don't know that we have the appetite in the US just yet to do that kind of thing at the expense it would take.
Thanks, Sandy. And Jimmy?
I'm a big fan of efficiency. I simply don't know the efficiency with which you can wirelessly charge a vehicle. If I'm losing 10, 15% of the energy in the transfer, I'm not for this at all. End of comment.
All right, and Lindsay?
Yeah, when I think about wireless charging, I think one of the great benefits is just not having to pick up a heavy wire. For instance, if someone gets injured and hurts one of their arms, it might be more difficult. And so I think that there's a big benefit in accessibility when we're talking about wireless charging.
Thanks, Lindsay. Go ahead, Buzz.
I was worried about the efficiency as well. At a show in Austin about a year ago, I spoke to a vendor that sold inductive charging equipment, and they were up into the 94, 96 percentile efficiency. So at that point, I'm thinking I can give up 4% if what I'm getting in exchange is we get rid of the VHS beta problem with CCS, Tesla, and CHAdeMO. That gets fixed overnight, depending on what it costs to retrofit existing EVs to take advantage of this. But the other problem, and this is going to be a growing problem, is people are just lazy. They won't put the charger cable back up. They're going to leave it on the ground. The next person pulls in or runs over it. Now we've got a dead charger for a few days while we wait for parts to come in to repair it. So it'll be better for the longevity of the charger equipment. It'll be better for the people who are putting the equipment in as far as their regular scheduled maintenance and insurance coverage. And it'll be better for all of us because we don't have to go look in an app and figure out, is this CHAdeMO? Is it CCS? What is it? It'll just be, oh, it's a charge port, and we pull in and park on top of it.
Thanks, Buzz. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. Yes, I think that some of the obvious things will be like taxi lanes at airports, where you've got a high use of the lane, but there's a long dwell time in the lane. So those vehicles can, as they progress forward, they can be going from one pad to another pad very simply. So those kinds of applications, I think, will be very important. The sagging cables comment is a very good example. We've seen over the years how even the longer filling hoses at gas pumps are on, more of a system that holds them up in the air so that if you drive away, there's not as much trouble with it. So I think just as we think about sort of the high use and longer dwell time applications, it will definitely make sense there, and we'll see how it goes for more of the fixed applications like in our homes.
Thanks, Bob. And go ahead, John.
Yeah. So on the inductive charging, I think obviously we're in a period of time of transition, right? And we have to make this easy for people. We shouldn't cause early adopters to have a tax. My car doesn't have inductive charging, and my car is rare enough to where there isn't an option for me to even put inductive charging on it. So I'm going to need to be cabled. And if that means I have to buy adapters, then I should be able to do that. As Bob just mentioned, retractable cables for the cords should make it easy to prevent people from leaving them on the ground. So I think you have to be able to, in this period of transition, be able to provide people with a capability to charge that meets them with what they have, right? We don't have the option, right? Like if I go buy a Chevy Bolt or a Tesla, I don't have an option to choose a different charge port on it. I get what I get. So you have to be able to meet people with what they have and provide the flexibility to do that, whether it's inductive, CHAdeMO, or the conventional level 2 charging. And then the one thing I also wanted to comment about was with regards to the regulation. One of the things that I find is, especially when you use places like ChargePoint, I get charged based on raw time, not based on the kilowatt hours that I dump into my vehicle. And so I actually pay a penalty from a price perspective on my car because my car doesn't charge as fast as, say, a Tesla does on the same network. And so for an hour's worth of time on the ChargePoint network, my car doesn't consume the same amount of kilowatt hours as a Tesla does. And so as a result, I'm not able to onboard as much energy as other vehicles are. And so from a price perspective, I get penalized because of the slower charge rate on my car. I would love to see the state sort of regulate this so that, just like gasoline, a gallon is a gallon is a gallon, a kilowatt is a kilowatt is a kilowatt should be the same on the charging network, so that so that again, early adopters aren't being penalized for buying into this and dealing with the charge limitations and the range anxiety that comes along with it in order to be able to get across the state.
Thank you. And last one is Seth.
So I just completed a almost 1,500-mile road trip from Virginia to Houston. And I got an observation on that charge per minute versus the charge per kilowatt hour. I mostly charged on Electrify America. They have two different rate tiers. If your car takes power between 1 and 90 kilowatts, they charge about half. They charge half of what they charge if you're pulling down power at higher than 90 kilowatts. Through Virginia and North Carolina, I was paying by the kilowatt hour at a flat rate of 31 cents a kilowatt hour. Once I hit Georgia and the southern states, I was paying 12 cents per minute. And that actually paying per minute with my bolt that starts at 52 kilowatts and pretty quickly drops off after that actually proved to be a much cheaper rate. After taxes, I was averaging about 17 cents a kilowatt hour when I was paying per minute versus the 31 cents per kilowatt hour I was paying when I was paying per kilowatt hour.
All right, thanks, Seth. That was everybody for that question. So thank you all. We have about 3 minutes before we're supposed to switch over to the NEVI update. Do we have time for another question?
Yeah, let's take one more question. We can push into the NEVI time a little bit. I think we should, I think we already know about the credit card swipers. Let's move to the final question. Not the final, but what kind of transitions do we expect in the world of electric transportation? Let's move to what we expect to see what people think.
Yeah. Tell us about your dreams.
Go ahead, David.
I've already seen advertised small electric airplanes by a company in Europe. So that's pretty interesting. I'm not sure how that's going to work with the weight of batteries, etc. But they have a two-seater airplane that's on the market.
I know a little bit about electric aviation. If somebody would like to contact me, you're more than welcome to.
All right, go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to say I'm definitely interested. My son's an aerospace engineer, and we look a lot at the electrical airplanes, et cetera. But just recently, I've seen a lot of information about the electric boats, and just given the weight ratios that are possible in a boat versus an airplane. Plus just there's ecological benefits, to getting oil and gas off of lakes and rivers and streams. And it just seems like the electric boat category for pleasure craft, getting rid of, very noisy gas powered jet skis, which are a nuisance and a danger in a lot of places. So I think that's a real growth area as well that personally I'd like to see develop quickly.
Thanks, Gerald. And John?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, definitely boats. I follow several manufacturers that are working on boat technology based on electrification, leveraging additional capabilities such as hydrofoils to maximize the range and efficiency of those vehicles. When I think about the transition, I think we're going to see some options. I don't know whether we're considering this in terms of broadly applying capabilities across the state, but leveraging things like battery packs. They're working on there's some emergent capabilities where they're working on charging stations that pull from a low power source like a 110 at a convenience station that charges a battery pack that can then be used to supply a car so that at a level 2 level, and it has an onboard battery so that it can dump that energy into the electric vehicle and then trickle charge back to pack when it's not being used for charging. And so I think that's a great idea for helping us get this capability across the state so people can, you know, make use of their electric cars and travel freely, especially on the back roads and in the, you know, in the smaller areas where you're not on a major thoroughfare. In addition to that, I think we're going to see, you know, the ability to exchange batteries or to change batteries in order to charge vehicles to overcome some of the charge times. And then, you know, I think the other thing that I'm keenly interested in is something that the new Ford Lightning is supposed to be supporting, and that is the ability to, and especially what we've seen with recently with ERCOT and their inability to supply power to the grid during peak demand, is having the ability to use my electric car as a backup capacity for my home in the event that the grid is not able to sufficiently supply power to my house during the times of peak demand. So, you know, I think back to the event that happened in February, and boy, it sure would have been nice to have, you know, even though I had an EV, I didn't have a way to back drain that back into my house conveniently. But I sure love the idea of being able to use that as a backup capability to power my house in the event that ERCOT isn't able to maintain energy to the home.
Thanks, John. Go ahead, David.
We vacationed in Austin recently, and we were impressed that on Lake Bird Lake there, nothing powered by gasoline is allowed. So all the tour boats looking at the bats in the evening, of which we saw millions, fortunately, when we went, are electric powered. Otherwise, people are just having fun paddling, stand-up paddling, using kayaks. It's really kind of very peaceful on that lake, as opposed to, I understand it used to be overwhelmed by power boats.
Thanks, David. Jimmy?
Maybe this is really off subject, but I would really like to learn more about how we can speed up hydrogen fuel cell power to replace battery power. I believe in Texas we have an enormous capability of producing hydrogen and off-peak power with our excess wind, and hydrogen is, I don't see a solution for long-term truck vehicles without hydrogen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. And Anil, excuse me if I pronounced it wrong.
No, that's great. Thanks, Amanda. I missed the opportunity to raise my hand earlier, so I just wanted to add to the questions earlier. So I have driven a Toyota RAV4 that has a Tesla electric conversion. And then my other car that I have is driving is a Polaris Gem, which is a low-speed form of microtransit. And I have a small VIP electric tours company that runs around the downtown city as a form of microtransit. And then I have a Irby electric scooter, which is a folding electric scooter for the last 3 years. And the three of these help me function short distance and long distance. But one of the trends I hope to see more of is more support for microtransit in the city to keep, make it safer for alternate modes of electric EVs around the city, and less pollution, and just creating the efficiencies of getting passengers around the city safely throughout, large scale events, and through the changes that are happening in the city. Thanks. Sorry.
Thanks, Anil. Thanks, everyone. I think that was all of them.
All right. Kevin, thank you so much for leading this discussion.